Big news for Irish NFL fans this week as Packers supporter Stephen O Brien has been named the Greenbay Packers nominee for NFL International Fan of the Year. The honour recognises fans around the world who grow the game and build a community beyond the United States. Stephen founded the UK and Irish Packers fan club in 2013, helping it grow into the largest Packers fan community outside America, and he'll now head into the 2026 NFL Draft in Pittsburgh as part of the celebration. Stephen, congratulations and welcome to the show.
Kieran, I can't believe you did that all off the top of your head. Unbelievable talent. Unbelievable.
Isn't that unbelievable? You'd swear I was reading that off from my sheet, wouldn't you?
Just how professional it was. Come here, why are we wearing purple? I mean, it's a bit too Vikings adjacent here. I can see, not unless it's a blue shirt you have.
Yes, that's blue. That's blue. And I should be wearing green. I apologize. I was saying to you on air before you came on, or off air, should I say? I'm a bit jealous. I see we've got our Packers gear in line in the background there. We've got a common Packers photo in the background, but I'm missing my certificate of ownership. So you're many steps ahead of me in terms of Packers fandom.
I'm just flexing on you. That's all it was. It's just a measuring competition. You know what I mean?
That's all right. That's all right. Stephen, congratulations again. An unbelievable week for you. I spotted the video. I've seen the video in many places now of you being announced. Was that live on air? Was it on a podcast or how did that come about?
Yeah, so me being surprised was on a podcast. It was actually a while ago now, and I think some crowd, they found out who won it and they did the rounds to sort of put everything in motion. And then the NFL told everybody to hold off because the official announcement was a little bit later. So unfortunately, I was going around carrying that burden for a long time, but I did not expect that was a real live reaction because, in fact, I was brought on that's the official Greenbay Packers podcast, which I was so stoked about. And he brought me on under the guise of, give us a couple of your top moments of the season or whatever. And so I didn't expect him. And as an Irishman, when he started giving me a really lovely intro, I started to squirm in my seat and feel very uncomfortable. So I was wondering where this was all going. So yeah, just an absolute honor. Like you say, this has been going since 2013. It's 13 years in the making now. And like you, it's done, well, I'm not going to assume for you, but for me anyway, it's done, regular job, put the kids to bed, and all that. And then it's done kind of on the side and in weekends and all that kind of stuff. So to bring it to where we've brought it and to get this recognition as well, as an Irishman, is very uncomfortable, but I'm going to try bask in it as much as I can.
Absolutely. No, I'm in the same boat as yourself. Kids to bed, day job during the day. I'm teaching in school, and today we talked about Proverbs. I'm trying to think of it now. I was trying to explain to the kids from little acorns mighty oaks grow, or something along those lines. I was trying to explain it. Presumably that's the story for UK and Ireland Packers. I presume you started out with, it's rooted in humble beginnings. Tell us a little bit about the journey from 2013 to today and what it's become and what it's grown into. And could you have ever foreseen it becoming what it is today?
Never. I mean, it started off as a Twitter account when it was Twitter. And it sort of grew, as you said, the acorn was planted there, right? And look, we had three aims starting this whole thing. This is why we did it, is that, and you're a Packers fan, right? You know what it's like. Aaron Rodgers is banging Hail Marys 2013. Every second play is a Hail Mary. You're running around the house at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. and you're waking the wife up and she's filing divorce papers and even the dog's leaving the house with his bags packed. So it's a lonely place to be. And back in 2013, the landscape of the NFL was completely different here. Nowadays it's quite common to go into Elvery Sports and, you can't walk without falling over American football stuff. Whereas before there was none of that. So it started off sort of as kindred spirits, sort of let's get virtually together on Twitter. And then I sort of was writing for the old NFL Ireland as it was back then. I mean, this was like really ancient stuff. And I was writing there and I had a couple of connections just with various NFL journals and broadcasters and stuff back then. So I tried to bring that to the UK Packers. So we started a website and then I started the podcast, and then the podcast got very popular. And then we were staging meetups in person. Sorry if this seems like I'm reaming off a laundry list of stuff here. And then it went from in-person meetups and it sort of really solidified into a brotherhood and sisterhood as such. And look, we had three aims, I guess. Number one was to hold meetups in person. So we did that fairly early on. The second thing we thought we were going to do, Kieran, was get the Packers over to London. Now, again, I know there's the opportunity for Dublin, not this year, and Madrid and Paris and Australia and the moon and everything else, because the moon has cheese. I think that's a tacked on, right? But it was London back then, and in 2013 we thought this was a couple of years in the future, so let's get this thing up and rolling so that we can sort of commandeer a section of Wembley or whatever. And it didn't happen until 2022. So that was aim number 2. And aim number 3 was to go to Lambeau somehow, somewhere. And we ended up doing that well before the London trip. So we've been going back and forth to Lambeau now on our annual tour for the last 10, 11 years, maybe. So I've been to Lambeau, in fact, abashedly more than some of the people in Greenbay. There's plenty of people over there who've never been. They've been fans all their lives, but have never got to a game. So it's really, really surreal. And now we find ourselves, I was the host for the Packers official huddle party that came over for London and Dublin. We did a joint party as equal partners, which is just mind-boggling, right? With the Packers to bring Daniel Whelan over to Dublin, and we had that event. And then the icing on the cake then is getting named the International Fan of the Year. And I'm quite aware that to everybody who doesn't know about NFL, this is nothing, right? But to us, and to have the meetups and to meet in person is just really the most special thing. And it's bizarre expressing emotion as an Irish person. But I mean, when you get together and you see these games together, it literally can't be rivaled. And it's culminated randomly in a giant 30-foot mural in my hometown to announce the International Fan of the Year, which everyone thinks is AI, and I thought it was AI as well. I am absolutely not deserving of a giant mural in my hometown. It's absolutely bonkers, but that's just kind of the fever dream I'm living right now. And so there's no way, Kieran, I would have expected that when I started this in a bedroom on a sofa, 13 years ago, that I'd be sitting here talking to the Irish NFL show about the fact that there's a 30-foot me down the town somewhere,
But I've seen it. It's very impressive. So it's in your hometown of Arklow. And for anyone listening, get online and have a look at it. Or even if you're in the vicinity of Arklow, go check it out. It's absolutely it's spectacular. But you're so right, Stephen. It's all about community, isn't it? Because when as you said back in 2013, which is around about the time I started becoming interested in this sport. You did find yourself on an island up late at night, trying to explain to people, yes, it is a stop-start game, but there are, if you can get past that, there are so many rewards to watching and enjoying the sport. And then it's finding a community wherever you can to enjoy the sport. I've growing pockets of friends here around West Cork, where I'm from, and then becoming involved with this show was just was absolutely a massive turning point for me and my fandom with regards to the show. But back to you, Stephen, International Fan of the Year. How does one become International Fan of the Year? Was there an application process for yourself? Did someone apply for you, or were you plucked from obscurity?
Well, the first two, right? I've been doing this a very long time, and I call myself the anti-influencer. I really don't care about putting my face on things, right?
Yeah.
I do YouTube videos. I'm starting to get into it a bit more, to say, like, in the fact that we've been going 13 years, I'm only delving into it now. It really doesn't interest me. So I never really was going to go forward for International Fan. And there was so many people from the fan group, because look, I do an all expenses paid trip giveaway and I bring people to Greenbay. I do meetups. There's a couple that met and since got married, right? I mean, by accident mostly, I've sort of impacted people's lives along the way, but I was never really interested in becoming sort of a super fan or a spearhead of anything, really. I was just doing my thing and staying in my own lane. But people kept bugging me about it and kept saying, go in for it. And I was like, I'm not interested. It's not really my bag. And then one of the guys just said, right, I'll do it for you. So he went and filled out the form and put it all together and put it into a Word document and sent it across to me. Right? And I was like, great, thanks for doing all of that, but there's no way I'm submitting this. Right? So, between the jigs and the reels, it was submitted for me. And I didn't think anything else of it. I knew the announcement was sometime in February. I didn't even give it a second thought, because, the way the process actually works, to give people behind the scenes, the Packers don't pick this off. They don't just sort of pick someone off the street and bring them in. It's an application process. And in fact, the applications don't get to the Packers until they get filtered through an anonymous panel in the NFL offices themselves. Mm-hmm. So just because I was, have a good relationship with the Packers, I've had Mark Murphy on and I'm a diehard fan, was absolutely not a shoe-in for me to get it. It wasn't if I could pull some strings. It just so happened that my application was deemed good enough to get through the NFL and to the Packers. And then I don't really know what the selection process is. Somehow I came out on top. So that's really the process of it. It's not something I sought out, is what I'm trying to say. But
I'm hearing the Irish insecurity from here. We don't like promoting
no.
ourselves. We absolutely turn away from self promotion. But Stephen, I mean, you've done the work. You've clearly, you've clearly put the time and effort into organizing such a fantastic community, as we say. Why not throw your hat in the ring for this? I mean, we've met Tom McCormack, who was the Steelers Fan of the Year last year, on various occasions, and it does seem like it was an incredible experience. It seems like it was an unbelievable year for him, and why not get to enjoy it when you've put the work in and put the effort in? So, have you a vision of what the year looks like ahead for you? I know you're getting to go to the you'll be in the draft in Pittsburgh in April. Aside from that, have you other kind of ambassadorial duties or anything else that you foresee happening?
To be honest with you, I'm not too sure, because again, and complete notions, right? And again, I'm not knocking anybody who would go forward for this type of thing. It's a fantastic award. It's just that I've been doing it so long now, it just was never my bag. I'm not quite sure. You see, the thing is, I sort of take on an ambassadorial role in my own right? I'm always and I got a really good opportunity to do it on the Irish front with that Irish Huddle Dublin event, because I got not free reign. That's a very lofty expectation to have when you're dealing with a multi-billion-dollar company. But one of my suggestions to them is that I would love to connect Ireland to Greenbay in a really tangible way. And that was digging up, not the actual bodies of dead Irishmen who played for the Packers, but digging up stories about said Irishmen. And there was one story about how an Irishman saved the Packers in their second year in existence and stuff like that. I think probably what I'll do is, to come back directly to your question, is that I've sort of, yourself, I mean, you probably face this too, is that you have to walk the tightrope of talking to someone who doesn't really know what NFL is, and then also to appease the absolute anoraks, everything about it. And I have to sort of walk that line too. But I always walked on the line more so of the experienced fan as such. So if you're a Packers fan, that's why you're going to listen to me. Otherwise, you've probably no interest. So I'm probably going to pivot a bit more to sort of work on people who don't have a team at all, and sort of try indoctrinate them with the Green Bay Packers maybe, and do that kind of a role. I'm the only international fan of the year, as far as I know, this year from Ireland. So that puts me in a unique role as well, to kind of really spotlight the Packers in that way as well. But it's so synergistic, right, if that's a word, because I would have been doing all of this sort of stuff for the Packers anyway. So I think I'll probably just pivot more to trying to get the Packers someone's second team or something like that. And look, the mural that's 30 feet here and on the wall, and it says Green Bay Packers on it. People are going to ask questions, right? So I'm thinking our club becomes the first stronghold of Packers fandom, where everybody in town is, pro Packers. But yeah, that's kind of the pivot. Official duties, I don't know if I'm opening shopping centres or signing babies' faces with marker or whatever. I don't know what's involved, but I'm yet to find out.
You'll enjoy it anyway. Sure, you can be sure. And it helps having Enniskerry up the road as well, the home of Dan Whelan. So you've got the Wicklow connection already. So you're
something in the water here in Wicklow. Something in the water here.
Absolutely. Well, Dan Whelan certainly wasn't the reason you became a Packers fan, because he would have been in nappies, I'd say. But when you started following them, so why Green Bay? Because people often ask me that when they ask me about the NFL. I can't quite put my finger on it particularly, but it was the intrigue. When it comes to the publicly owned team, the Lombardi Trophy, Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre, all that helped. I often tell people that just simply the colour is green and gold. It's my GA club at home is green and gold. So I just had so many reasons. It was kind of, for me, it was why not the Packers. And then I became enamored with them more and more as the years grew. I love the history of the Packers, and then I got to make that pilgrimage. Just the once. I know I haven't been there as often as yourself. Made that pilgrimage, and it was the 1st of January 2023. So Aaron Rodgers' last win, should I say, in Lambeau Field against the Vikings, which was sweet. So for you, why the Packers?
Yeah, look, it's everything that you just mentioned. We all start off somewhere, and that's why some people are ashamed sometimes to tell their story, right? Because one of the guys who became a fan because Dorsey Levens was on the front cover of Madden, and he was kind of shameful about it. And I said, that, like, how else are you going to become a fan? Other people, it was... You do, yeah, and that 70s show. Like, for me, how it happened is that I was always kind of into the NFL, and I was getting into Super Bowl as usual. I'd stay up late and enjoy the fanfare of it. And like I tell people, the Super Bowl is kind of a gateway drug to the NFL. You start watching that and you get involved in it, and then all of a sudden you sort of, you either pick a team or a couple of teams. So for me, I had a good friend who was into it. He was actually the quarterback for the UCD at the time. And he says to me, he said, Steve, look, you're watching the Super Bowl. That's great. You have an interest. Would you be interested in playing? And I said, well, I'm a tiny human, so probably not. And he said, well, look, the best way to do it is just go home, pick a team. And get behind them. Even if you can switch, whatever. So I did that, and I looked down through them, Kieran, and then you see falcons and bears and lions and panthers, and everything seems like an animal, right? Or some sort of pirate of some sort. So when I saw the Packers, I was like, what the hell animal is a Packer? Like, I don't know if we've Packers in West Cork, So I look into it, and the minute you look into the name, the Packers, because it sounds like packing boxes, and that's effectively what it is. It's meat packing, right? So it brings it back to, the Acme Packing Company, the Indian Packing Company, brings it back to Curly Lambeau and how he started it. It brings it back to the story, if you really persist with it, that a deluge of rainfall caused him to give the team over to the community in Greenbay. The only really, and again, I get stick for this, the only really big, serious sports team that's owned by the community, and there's a couple of soccer teams and a couple of nice stories, but to the level that they are is incredible. The fact that then if you follow that sort of thread, there's a couple of paddies thrown in there. There was Neil Murphy who saved the team in the second year by building a fence around the open field they used to play in, and then charging the people that built the fence into the game because they used to pass the hat, just a cheeky Irishman. And then the Packers, throughout their whole story, nearly went broke about 7 or 8 times. They had Rockwood Lodge, a training facility, burned down. They get insurance money. Otherwise, they would have went broke. Bob Harlan, I spoke to Olivia Harlan. She was at that Dan Whelan event. Her family was instrumental in sort of bringing the, it's just, it's the most fascinating story in sports because it shouldn't exist. In a town of Greenbay that has 103,000 people and the stadium holds 80 to 90,000 people, and it isn't this way, but at any given time, 80% of the population. I mean, if you're a burglar, go to Greenbay on game day because houses are going to be free. The whole thing is fascinating, and that's only the sort of team history side of it. And a lot of teams have great history. The Packers, I think, is unrivaled. But look at the players that we've had, from Vince Lombardi, the trophies named after, Bart Starr, Ray Nitschke, who have a bobblehead of on my desk. And then it leads up into the sort of lean years, they call them, in 70s and 80s. And then greatness comes back in the 90s, right? And then if you go really far back, you can go to Curly Lambeau, and he's one of the winningest coaches as well. So Aaron Rodgers, I think, pulled people in, and now it's Matt LaFleur era. So there's so many eras that you could have been involved, apart from the 70s and 80s, with the Packers, that could make you a fan. If it's Brett Favre is your guy, happy days. If Aaron Rodgers, whatever. And that's kind of what drew me in. And it's the history that keeps me, because I don't know about you, Kieran, and I will stop talking now.
No, I could listen to this all day.
But, Ireland is a very historic place, and I've always been really, really interested in history. Like, my family are a military family. They would have fought in World War I, and one of my ancestors got shot in the arm, and you can see records of him being stuck in an infirmary off in France after fighting on the front, and then he comes back and fights in the Irish Civil War on the side of Michael Collins, and it's just, the whole thread through my whole family is just steeped in history. So to have that in your football team just creates that extra connection. And then when so look what's happening in Chicago, right? They could be moving off to Indiana because that's where the money is. They want to build a new stadium. That'll never happen in Green Bay. So it's unlikely that it was ever in Green Bay, that Milwaukee didn't get it at the very least. And now we know that the team cannot be moved somewhere else, and it just makes it all the more special.
Like, you try to explain to people back here that, the NFL is such a corporate machine. It's such a global marketing monster. And I say that with all due respect, because that's what endears us to it. That's what gives us the access that we get. We're just back from San Francisco where we got, access to players, coaches, media personalities that I just could not believe. It was my first time being at a Super Bowl. So I don't, I'm not knocking it for a second, but then you, as you said, you come to this community in Green Bay. And when you travel from Milwaukee, which is what I did, on a bus up to Green Bay, you're basically on a motorway. It's like being on the M8 or the M7 in Ireland. And you come, for every other city that you go to in America, you'll see the skyline from miles out. You don't see that in Green Bay. You see the stadium. The stadium is what hits your eye first. The stadium kind of creeps up on you, and all of a sudden, it's this behemoth in front of you. Then you get off the bus. You walk down the streets, you look left and right. It's Mike McCarthy Way, Mike Holmgren Way. You see the statues of Vince Lombardi, the statues of Curly Lambeau. You've got Nitschke Field. You've got the Don Hutson Center. As you said, you are absolutely immersed in the history of the team. And the history of Green Bay is the history of the Packers. Is that what endears the Irish community to to the Packers as a fan base, because we know that the Packers fan base is quite strong in Ireland and the UK and internationally in general? Is it the parochial nature? Because I mean, we're surrounded here by GA clubs all over, all up and down the country, and we love that hometown feel, and we're so proud of it when we talk about our own sports. Is that the main hook for Irish people in supporting the Packers, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a factor. Look, we're kindred spirits. And look, Lambeau Field is Croke Park, basically, just massive. Like Croke Park built in the middle of houses, and you come to it and you can't believe it's where it is. And Lambeau Field is exactly the same. There's party houses kind of around it now. But most of the time it's just a mom and pop kind of operation. The people are lovely. It's a farming community. They've strong Irish heritage. And they're massive in Germany. The Packers are too, because there's a huge German and Belgian diaspora there too. And it's that feeling. I think it's very palatable for the Irish audience and the UK audience as well, where, I mean, we've guys coming on the Greenbay annual tour, and I'm a United fan, right? Of course, because it was the Fergie era. But like, we've had loads of lads. One of the lads supports Stevenage, and he's so into his team, and you see people who are around what I would count as kind of the big cities like Manchester, Liverpool, but they don't support those teams. They support their little local team.
Yeah.
And it's very sort of, as you said, sort of parochial a bit there in that regard. So I think the Packers really appeals to them, because there's something about the flashy American bright light stuff that some people find is a bit too much, right? Military flyovers. I think it's just, when you're in a stadium with the military flyover, it's awe-inspiring. But some people, that doesn't wash with them, right? And we saw that kind of sentiment, I think, when the NFL game came to Dublin. There was an awful lot of opposition to it, and they linked it directly to the American military and politics and all that kind of stuff. Whereas in Green Bay, you're kind of away from all of that, and it's everybody just hanging out. I mean, I say it all the time, and I got some stick for saying it before, and I said it many years ago, and there was a story in Wicklow where there was a local match, and one of the teams didn't agree with it, and he stuffed the referee into the boot of his own car and locked it, right? So that'll kind of give you an example. So I said that, sports over here can get very chippy. And we know sort of in English stadiums, they have to put the away crowd in a corner to stop everyone from killing each other. And then even you go up into Scotland, there's the derby up there between, Celtic and Rangers or whatever. Whereas in Green Bay, there's so many vox pops out there, Kieran, isn't there, of people saying, I expected to come here and get hit with a can of spotted cow, but they handed me a spotted cow and said, come on and tailgate with us. It's just really friendly people. So I think there's an element of sort of that to it too, that it's a real family bond kind of thing, and it's a safe place to go. But it could be more popular, I think, because don't the New York teams and the Kansas City Chiefs and the Eagles and everywhere that's easier to fly into from Dublin or London always gets the shtick. So I think we have a lot more to do, you and I, to try spread the Vince Lombardi,
Absolutely, I'm well and truly on the bandwagon as well. And you mentioned the people as well. That when I went to Lambeau, it was as part of a trip to Chicago, and Chicago obviously is a much bigger city, and I hope Connor, our resident Chicago's fan here, on our resident Bears fan, should I say, on the show here, won't give me too much stick for saying it, but in Chicago is a really big city feel. So when my wife and I were there, it was very much, we were there on our own, and we saw the sights, and it was an amazing city. Absolutely loved it. When we went to Milwaukee, when we went to Wisconsin, we based ourselves in Milwaukee, and the minute we went down, it was just a market, and one of the more famous markets there in Milwaukee. Sat down, had a beer, had a pizza, and we were immediately, people were drawn to us, and they started talking to us and asking us where we were from and why we were here, and could believe that we had traveled all this way just to go and see the Packers. So I get that, and I get that that small town nature. The minute you hit even the state of Wisconsin, not just Green Bay, but even in Milwaukee, which is a nice smaller industrial city. You mentioned chippiness, and the party houses. There's a famous one now where you can rent if you've got enough money to pay for it on Airbnb. But it's Packers wall to wall. You've got the stadium in the background, and the toilet then is made up of I think it's Vikings, Bears, and Lions urinals and toilets, things like that. So you can do whatever damage you want when you're in there. Have you? Presumably you'll be making a pick at the draft. Are you going to do a Clay Matthews and come out and remind the world that the Bears still suck? Or have you thought about how your announcing style will go?
I've been racking my head with it. This is the direction I'm going, and I haven't told anybody this publicly, and if it changes, so be it. But I know that it's very important to be, and I love the history of the draft too, right, if I want to get real anorak with it. But I just feel bad for the players, because they want to go in round one, which the Packers don't have a first round pick, right? And I think I'm picking third or fourth round, which is an unbelievable honor. But the players, what is it? 2% of all college players end up making it to the NFL, and they're not the guys who are even drafted as undrafted free agents in there. So I'm sort of thinking, how disappointed is it that after you get after the second round, there's like grandmothers and lads skydiving while taking pics, and there's dogs and being taught English to be able to, and then a little Irishman coming out, and the guy I draft won't probably understand the accent and know that he's been drafted, right? So I feel bad for him. So with that being said, I've been sort of toying with the thing of, do I come out and sort of try play to the Irish, any Irish in the crowd, blah, blah, blah. I was thinking, do you know what? I should probably honor the guy that I'm drafting and say, and say something nice about him and go, you've spent all your time doing this. Now, I know I'll have literally 30 seconds to know who it is and then try to come up with some sort of bio, but I'd love to somehow honor that guy and make it less about me and Ireland and this, that, and the other, and probably make it more about him. I don't know if it'll matter to him as much, but I just think I don't want to add insult to injury to go out there. I'm no Clay Matthews, is what I'm saying. I know I might have a 30-foot mural in my hometown with everybody else, even my people in my hometown don't even know who it is. So yeah, I'd love to make it about the player, if I'm honest, but that might change. I might come out topless with an Irish flag painted on my face. I mean, who knows?
Absolutely. Why not? Why not? Have at it. I'm very conscious I've taken so much of your time already, Stephen, but I do have to ask you about the football side of things before we part ways. I mean, you mentioned that the Packers don't have a pick until the second round. What do you hope to see in the offseason from the Packers? Because they made a couple of splashes last year in free agency in Nate Hobbs and Aaron Banks. Both seem to be a bit of a bust. We're going to be waiting on the fitness of Micah Parsons. So the pass rush is up, and the situation is up in the air. Who knows whether Rashan Gary would be on the squad or whether Lucas Van Ness would step up. What do you want to see first and foremost from the Packers in the offseason in terms of whether it's finding talent in the draft or in free agency?
Yeah, unfortunately, we have to go defense again. Since you've been a fan since 2013 as well. So when you look at it, I mean, how much focus did we put on defense in the draft? We finally made a splash and went offense, but I think the offense could be in great shape. Despite the Matt LaFleur haters for some reason, I think we need everybody back healthy there. But yeah, defense is a big concern. I mean, it comes down to coaching too, right? Jeff Hafley's gone. So, sort of how's that going to pan out this year? Will we bringing in a new system? And as you said, is Rashan Gary going to stick around? Is Micah Parsons when is he going to come back and be healthy? Because people point at it, don't they? Tucker Kraft and Micah Parsons, and that was the reason why we didn't reach the Super Bowl, which might seem laughable in a way, that two players. But again, I completely agree. I mean, if they're on top of their game, we could have went really far. So I think we have to invest in defense. And I think that, and I don't mind it too much. You buy a Ferrari to drive it like a Ferrari, right? So you get a Micah Parsons and you get him to wreck the line. And I don't mind too much that when he's out, when you don't have your Ferrari, that you can't drive as fast. Oh my God, what a shock, right? So I think that does happen. And I think Rashan Gary's got an awful lot of stick, and the D-line has got an awful lot of stick because of that. But I think he's an important piece. I would give up first-round picks all day long to have him in the building, by the way. I don't think it's some sort of massive error. No. But I think that, the safety position, I think we're looking quite well. I think cornerback needs to be addressed. I think special teams also needs to be addressed in the returner game. We can't be running Keyshawn Nixon out there. And then I don't know where we stand on the receiver core. We're going to have some casualties there. There's already sort of talk of, Dobbs being out the door, and I saw a podcast banging on about letting Jaden Reed go and, all this type of stuff. So it's hard to know where we stand with that. But look, we're in the Super Bowl window. There's no doubt about it, I don't think. And I just hope that we add pieces to the defense and our D coordinator can put it all together in the first year, which is, no mean feat, Kieran, is it really, when you have that much sort of change? And now we're dealing with special teams changing and having a new coach there. And also he was an assistant head coach too. So look, you never really know. Sometimes, adding is subtraction sometimes as well. You can add pieces like you said about Nate Hobbs and Banks, and that just didn't seem to pan out. I'm not too down on the guys, they got injuries and whatever. But yeah, it's hard to know. And there's an awful lot of expectation on the draft, speaking of, isn't there? You get a player in and they never really hit the ground running. And so we'd look to see a sort of a good sophomore season from Matthew Golden. And the likes, but yeah, look, it's going to be.
Matthew Golden did step up. I mean, in the absence of some of the other receivers, in the absence of Tucker Kraft in the final game, he did show his ability to make big plays in big moments. And I think he was probably getting a bit of stick for not being too productive. Matt LaFleur was probably getting more stick than he deserved for not using him as often as he could have. I think it's beyond doubt he's going to be back this year. They're as you said, they're going to have casualties in that receiving room because it's just too full to pay everybody. So whether it's Reed, Watson, Dobbs, as you said, Matt Schneidman, I think is writing that Dobbs is almost out the door. So my prediction is they keep Watson, they'll keep Golden, and I think they'd be wise to keep Reed as well if possible. Tucker Kraft is an absolute stud, and I think Luke Musgrave stood up as well a little bit in his absence. So you've got a good 1-2 punch at tight end when he comes back, and if he comes back at the same fitness. So as you're kind of stacking superstars here, you're stacking an offense that a lot of teams would really, really be envious of. I don't think there's a question about Jordan Love's ability. I do think there's a little bit of a question about Matt LaFleur in the big moments. I do think there's a certain toughness that we need to see from him, and we need to see his chest out. We need to see him put his foot on the throat of teams when he has them, in a precarious position, because we just let the Bears back in. We just let them breathe too much. We gave them that little bit of oxygen that they needed one too many times. But as you said, there's the nucleus of a fantastic team there that was unlucky with injuries as well in the last season. I do think corner is the obvious thing to address, and I think you need to maybe go for proven talent. Whether you go for the likes of a Tariq Woolen, who had obviously his terrible, shocking moment for the Seahawks, but has undoubted talent, because there were moments towards the end of the season when the Packers got turned over, when the pass rush did their job. Got teams to third and long, fourth and long, and next thing you just saw these massive balls over the top and blown coverages. It just happened too often. So I think if they address that, I think, and keep everybody else fit, they'll be thereabouts again to make a push in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, you're dead right, and we cannot look down on the free agency. I know that's not the sexy thing to do in Green Bay, but look at the best players for the Packers over the last couple of years. Xavier McKinney brought in free agency, Micah Parsons, massive splash, Josh Jacobs. I didn't think we could replace Aaron Jones as quick as we did, but we did. Now, again, they don't all work. I mean, you pointed out ones that didn't, right? But I think that you do need that, because there's that criticism, right? Is that we're the youngest team in the NFL 3 years on the trot now. And it turns out that our most impactful players are not in that core of youngest players. They bring up that average by being the free agents, right? So I think there needs to come a point where they need that veteran talent. But the thing is look at Matt LaFleur, and I know people are down on him, and I completely agree with you. He sort of soiled the bed an awful lot of time, and there are questions around his toughness. And him letting games go, and that is pretty criminal. But again, some of that stuff was it was a mixture of not enough toughness and just absolutely freaky plays. Like Romeo Dobbs hands of steel, and he's the one who turns the ball over on that sort of special teams play. So it is what it is. But I do think he's learning, Kieran. I mean, there was times where he would get hyper conservative and wouldn't make any changes and try to eke the game out. And then there's times he's been caught out in the last year or two, particularly last year, where he tried to be too aggressive, and people criticized him for that. So you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. It's one of those things. If it works, you're a legend. And if it doesn't, then we're here talking about him on the show, saying he needs to step up more.
Well, please God, they can get out of 7th seed purgatory and make a bit of a deeper push next year. We'll have you back for the Super Bowl preview next year. Stephen O Brien, it's been a pleasure. I wish you all the best. Congratulations again, and the very best of luck with an exciting year ahead.
Thanks very much, Kieran. Thanks for having me, man.